everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Yuval Ron and Lucinda Claire, and we are going to be talking about an album that they released this summer called Voyage through the Chakras. And we're talking about it because it's the perfect gift to give someone during Christmas. So the gift of music. So welcome, guys.
Hello, hello.
And I know you're excited. So tell me, so you guys just got one when it got released. We're number 10 in both world music and new age music on the ZMR list, which is probably incredible. And then you're on a list for the Grammy. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So how does that feel? Like, were you surprised? I mean, how are you feeling about it?
You go first.
Okay.
Were you surprised, Yuval?
Well, I was surprised that in July, when we released the album, the first month, it got to, I think, 183 radio stations play that.
Wow.
It was amazing. And we thought, who would want to play meditation music on the radio? You know?
That is interesting. Who was playing? I'm just curious. Who was it that was playing this music?
And I kept talking to the guy who was hired by the record company to do the promotion. And he said, and he's an expert. He's a guy who did all the Windham Hill New Age music distributions. And he told me, no, I know programs and I know DJs who will play your music. He wanted to hear the music first. He conditioned it. Right. So he listened to the double album. He listened to disc 1 with Lucinda's voice doing the guided meditations, and he listened to disc 2 with the music only. And he said, look, some DJs will not going to want to play the spoken word because that's a special thing. Some will play it, but some won't. But if they will not play the spoken word, they will play the music. I know they will. So it's good that you have 2 discs, disc 1, disc 2. So that was about the radio. And then, we were surprised. I was listening one day to KPFK 90.7 FM on, which is out of Los Angeles. And the DJ was doing something that we didn't expect. He played, let's say, the second chakra, and he played the track with Lucinda's voice, guided people how to meditate to the second chakra. And then after 30 seconds, he crossfade the track from album 2, which has the music only of the same piece. He continued with the music only. So he wanted to give the listeners, even though it's a radio station and people are driving and it was 12 p.m.
I'm feeling super emotional. Exactly. And creative all at once.
Yeah, imagine they could get sued, like relaxing all the drivers so much. So after 30 seconds, he faded down the spoken word and he faded in the music. And I thought it was a great solution to radio. I didn't think about it. Yeah. But the bottom line is that about 183 stations around the world, all around the world, played this music in July so much that he jumped in the first month out to number 10 in the world chart of radio stations. So that was a great feeling, very rewarding, and quite a surprise.
How about you, Lucinda? Did it surprise you too?
Yes, of course it did, because I think as an artist, you sort of throw things out, and I've had the opposite. I've thrown out things into the world and thought, this is going to be wonderful. No one's watching it. Never mind. So it's nice to have it. And I think, in fairness, probably a lot of us have that experience a lot. So when you have the other, and I think to me what was really important is, this is something that I feel really passionate about. I mean, I started meditating when I was in my 20s. For no more esoteric reason than I wanted to give up smoking cigarettes. And by the way, it worked. But I've been very passionate. Yeah, I've been a very passionate kind of meditator since then. And I think it's almost misleading because you hear meditation album. And one of the reasons why we made this is that we wanted to use amazing musicians from all over the world. I know Yuval is an extraordinary classical composer who has been nominated for a Grammy before, just to show off on his behalf. But it's not sort of, I don't know how to say this without being rude, but you know how there are meditation things which are sort of, contact your inner unicorn and you will. And we didn't want that. But I love unicorns, actually. So I don't know why I'm slagging unicorns off. But we wanted something very dynamic. And also we wanted to speak to people. I mean, our dream, or I think this is true for you too, but our dream was that we wanted this to be for beginners as much as for really advanced meditators. Because I know when I started, I found it incredibly difficult to just sit with myself, as it were, and descend into the breath. So I personally, at the beginning, wanted a voice to guide me. And if we, I mean, particularly like the third chakra, people are really surprised that it's quite kind of dynamic, some of it, or a call to action out in the world. It's not just saying zone people. It's hopefully, both in the music and in the words, it's taking people on a healing journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's activating. Yeah. It's pushing. It's not all about breathe slowly and relax. It's about
healing on an inner level and transform.
Yes. In certain aspect, becoming a social activist or becoming the best warrior of peace that you could be. So a warrior of peace, it's not about just relax and overcome stress. It's about becoming you as the warrior that go out for truth and justice.
That's right.
So that's one of the meditations. So it's really beyond what people expect. Meditation is. It's a practice to really invoke your higher virtues through the 7 chakras. We just use the 7 chakras as 7 categories of qualities.
And we had these extraordinary musicians. Most of them are colleagues and old friends of Yuval's, but we had one of India's greatest sitar masters.
Claire. Pandit Ghosh, who's considered now the greatest sitar player living in India. He played for us, and Shai Bensur, who's the opening act for Radiohead, recorded for us.
And we had the drummer from the Pretenders who came in.
And the first cellist of the California Symphony Orchestra, who plays for Star Wars movies and all the movies. Dennis Karmazan played the cello. So we got top-notch musicians. We hired 9 top-level musicians, 9 for one album. If you look around, I mean, just for comparison, in typical what we used to have, meditation or New Age music, a lot of time it's one guy with a synthesizer. It's one person in their bedroom with a keyboard, with electric keyboard. A lot of what has been done electronically, and just 1 or 2 people. We went out to produce an album like you do in the rock or pop world, where you invest. And fortunately, we had a record company behind us of Dr. Richard Gold, who you met last year, Meta Mindfulness Music. His record company came, they basically adopted our project. It started with Lucinda coming to me, and then I went to Dr. Gold, and I was surprised that he took it on, because he told me years ago that he's not interested in producing any album for Chakras because there are way too many. He said everybody has done the Chakras. I'm not interested in it.
And on that note, I want to say too that I feel, I mean, both of, and I think Yuval would feel the same about this, we're both saying sort of we did this, but I think both of us with this particular project really had the sense that we sort of showed up, and I don't want to sound too kind of out there, but it was like the universe just kept meeting us. I mean, I thought, well, we met in a coffee shop, and I said, well, we'll have to do a Kickstarter, won't we, to raise the money for this. And the next day, Yuval calls me and says, guess what? Dr. Gold is producing our album. And I said, you mean we don't have to do that Kickstarter? But it kind of went like that.
Sure. Well, but how did you meet in the coffee shop? Tell me how you met. So did you purposely meet, or were you like, I'll have like a single tall latte, and you're like, let's work together. I'm having a single tall latte too.
No. We had met many years ago. I persuaded my husband to go to see an amazing, quite eccentric sort of theatre series at UCLA, because my background is in theatre, and so I just love going to see interesting performance art. And Yuval was standing next to my husband, who, by the way, is rather shy and not prone to getting into conversations with people. But the show was so bizarre that they both had turned to each other and started to talk about it.
Yeah.
Then I know. And then, so it was odd when Daniel said, "I've met this wonderful man in the Louvre." I was like, okay. I did, where's this story going? And then he came out. And then he came up, we all started talking, and Yuval ended up doing the music for one of my husband's films. He has a film company in Barcelona and did a wonderful score for that.
The Evil Men Do.
Yeah, The Evil That Men Do.
Wow.
And we were all friends. And actually for years I had gone, I really should ask Yuval if he wants to. And this is to anyone out there in the audience who has that idea and they keep thinking, if only I could do this before I died, if only, and then your child, your dog, your husband, your work, your friends, your client take over and you don't do that thing. And one morning I just called up Yuval and said, we have to meet in the coffee shop. and I said, I have to do this. And he said, we must do this.
Okay, so what was happening to you? What inspired it? I just want to know what was the spark in each of you, because you had Richard like no chakra meditation. So how did this come about for you?
Well, I tell you, when I was in college, when I was in music school in Berklee College of Music in Boston, I took a course in Zen Buddhism and in Hinduism and Jungian psychology and all that. And part of those courses was about the chakras. And I studied also Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism on my own. I studied with Lubavitch, Orthodox Jewish mystical teachers back in Israel before I came to the States. And then in Boston, I continued to study it on the side. And then in college, I'm studying the chakras. And suddenly, and I was just 20 or 21, and it was really interesting for me that the 7 chakras in the Hindu traditions remind me. It was actually identically 7 of the sphirot, 7 of the energy centers in the Tree of Life.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Interesting. I did not realize that.
It's really interesting. So there's 10 centers of energies in the Tree of Life, and the top 7 of them are identical to the 7 chakras.
Wow.
And even the crown chakra is the same in Hebrew. The center is Keter, which means crown. So some of them, and the throat is called throat. So there's really similarities. And I ended up writing a paper in college, and I got a bonus because nobody asked me to write the paper. So I wrote a paper because I was interested in comparing the chakras and the Kabbalah. So I found this system of, and I've been doing yoga for almost 20 years. So I'm a yogi, just practicing yoga. And I found the chakra system, the energies, really fascinating. And also there's colors, there's energies, there's images, there's taste. For me as a composer, it's very vivid. When you tell me, what's the music for purple, white light, that feels such and such. For me, immediately it inspires music. So when Dr. Gold, 6 years ago, when he contacted me and he said that he wants to start a record company that will distribute and produce healing music, and he wanted to do a project based on Chinese medicine, and we did that based on the 7 elements. And then I asked him, wouldn't it be interesting to do a project about the chakras? Because to me, the chakras always inspired music, but I never ever based on the chakras. But here I had this record company that was interested in healing music, and I said, let's do the chakras. And he said, no, the chakras are not interesting. Everybody has done the chakras. There are too many products out there about chakras. So when Lucinda approached me, I was thinking about Dr. Gold, but then I thought, no, he said no already. But then I thought again, and the way Lucinda described it to me and the way I wanted to do it, we both had this feeling of, yes, there are products out there, but we had independently, each of us independently had a feeling that we have something to offer that will be different. It will not be another one of the products that are there.
Lucinda, how is it different for you? What's your perspective on how it's different?
I think it's something to do with the fact that we both saw, it's almost like there are 7 different people in a room. So often, I mean, of course, there's a cohesive line because you're opening the chakras and you're going up them, and just by virtue of it's my voice or it's his composition, there's something that ties it all together. But I felt they were profoundly different energy centers. And I studied, I trained as a Kundalini yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I studied them like that. And then I spent quite a bit of time with as you do, with a Himalayan master. Mm-hmm. And I went to Rishikesh and I, sat at his feet and I listened. And I also spent time around another Indian teacher for years and years. And I myself was teaching, and I was running these workshops called Mystic Boot Camp. Mm. And I would, and what would happen is I would just do the guided meditation for people with my voice. And then I would watch, the faces of the people who I was teaching, and I thought, it's much better with music. And I would try and find, like, my father loved music, and he wrote about opera, so I was brought up with, and I play the piano, and so I would try, well, what if I do Bach, or what if I do Gypsy Kings, or what if I would just put my voice, because I do voiceovers, with that. And then there came a point where I went, no, I can't find, it's why I wrote my book, it's the same reason. I thought, I can't find what I want to listen to. So I guess I better make it.
Right.
And honestly, that was more or less it. And I also saw how people responded to music. And I knew that Yuval also worked with wonderful kind of technical things, like he knew how to put, am I saying this right, but like binary beats underneath. Mm-hmm. I knew that he'd worked with affirmations. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could sort of have this layered music rather than me trying to play a bit of music, speak to my kind of students, whisper the affirmation, then get the mantra in. I thought that there must be a way of sort of like making a cake. And can we sort of deliver this layered thing? And also, just really frankly, I wanted to listen to absolutely beautiful music, because coming from England, people tend to be, horrible generalization, but I would say a lot of Americans who I know, I've lived here like 20 years now, there's sometimes less of a mask, there's less of a front, and music, I think, just cracks that. It just goes through. And I also, I'm very proud and happy of doing voiceovers. I've done lovely cartoons and all of that. But also, I mean, as you get older, I think you really look at your work and go, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I'm like, what would I like to have her listen to? Also, I don't know if that's answered your question at all, but that was part of how that was the inspiration.
Okay, so you had an inspiration. You said, let's make coffee. You've been thinking about this forever, it seems like, since you're writing your dissertation. And so how did you decide to collaborate together? I mean, how did you work together in layering the voice along with the music?
Well, again, and I don't want to overemphasize this point, but I think Yuval feels the same. It was honestly almost like it had been decided for us. It reminded me, there have been certain incidents in my life, like when I met my husband, who I've been married to for 25 years, it was sort of like, oh, there you are, and now we're off on this adventure. And as long as I didn't sabotage it or kick and scream or, get into an ego hissy fit, it was more like I was getting on a train. I was slightly surprised that I was on the train. I thought I was going to be raising money for 5 months.
Yeah, you're like, get on the train, yeah.
I better get on the train. So I do feel that I feel that that's true. And then as far as the layering,
it was really interesting. The whole thing evolved like that. So I asked Lucinda to write for me descriptions of each chakra, and when I received it, it was inspiring immediately, because she gave me actors that reminded her of the chakra. Movies, books, colors.
Oh, food. My goodness. Okay, I got to hear this. You had the books, movies, actors. Okay, got it.
Okay, so for example, I said the root chakra is Marlon Brando. Oh. And for example, the 6th chakra is Christopher Walken. I mean, I said, we would do, music. I mean, I think like Wagner's, I think, also down in the root chakra for me.
Yeah, it's very earthy.
Yeah,
very earthy.
And we would do food,
animalistically, really grounded in like a beast, like Caliban.
Yes, that's a good one too, Caliban.
So she gave me those colors, and it was just a list of things, and I started composing just with that. I had no idea what she's writing. I had no idea what the meditation is. I didn't know what she's going to guide the people or how. I knew nothing. I just had those short list of just seeds, of just directions of, the color is blue, the actor is this, or the color, the food is
roast potatoes.
Or watermelon. Right. With avocado, I don't know. She gave me just those things.
Right. So you gave you like kind of a 5 sensory imagery feeling. You had like a 5 sensory map that you handed over and said, "This is what the chakra is all about."
Well, because also I deeply respect him, and it's a bit like when you're in a play and the director just lets you have a go. Before they go, okay, and now we're going to remember that this is, a high comedy, and now we're going to do blah, 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 blah. But what would you do with nobody interfering? So I just wanted to see, well, what's he going to come up with without me going, this is the journey? And it was quite, I mean, there were a couple of moments where I thought, oh God, is this crazy? I mean, this maybe this doesn't meld, maybe this won't meld at all. But I thought, well, it's an improvisation, so let's just see. I'll come up with mine, he comes up with his, and then we'll meet.
Okay, so you came up with your list, and then so tell me when you heard like watermelon with avocado, Marlon Brando, like how did this get converted into like the sitar player, or is it sitar? Is that right? Yeah.
Well, and I also want to say that to a degree, I think what we were both trying to do was to get away from all the knowledge that we had about the chakras, because he had spoken to Indian masters. I had spoken to Indian masters, and there comes a point, where you can't receive something if you're too much in your head, it's too much. So I just wanted to wipe it clean and make it kind of fun.
Well, you've covered journeys of 20 years per se or 10. I don't know how long you've been doing this, but let's say 10 to 20 years of your own experiential sense of like what a first, second, third, fourth chakra. You know what I mean? So it sounds like you took your own integrated sense of it and then allowed that to be expressed in yourself, and then say, what is it? What does dark chocolate sound like to you?
No, but that's exactly right. It was like a conversation.
Yeah.
But CJ, after and before that stage, I went on a trip to India, and I met with directors of music therapy school in India, in Bombay, and a society called the Quantum Institute of India, which invited me and Dr. Gold to give a keynote address to them. And we had a meeting with all the heads of this institute for a dinner after our lecture, specifically to talk about future project that they are interested to do and what we do. And I mentioned to them the chakra project that I'm working on, and then they arrange a meeting for me with their biggest master, who's the head of the music therapy school, which is based on traditional Indian study of the Nada yoga, the yoga of sound. And he's a great man. And I met with him, and I told him about my project, and I asked him if he could share with me information about what musical ragas were used in India to invoke the chakras, what instruments would be used, what kind of, any hints. And in the beginning, he was very respectful. And I remember I gave him my book. I have a book called Divine Attunement that I wrote. So I gave him my book as a gift, and he pulled his little book, which is a small book, from his bag, and he gave it to me, and he was very respectful and very, and he demonstrated to me a breathing technique, and we talked about what happens in the brain waves, because he's involved both with Western science and with Indian ancient science. Mm-hmm. So we talked about how the breathing affect the brain waves, how once we do 10 deep breaths, and we really focus on the breath for 10 deep breaths, our brain goes from a beta wave frequency to an alpha wave. And he said, he always, whenever he teach, he'd bring his students first to the alpha wave, and then he start teaching. And so we had a really good rapport, and we start sharing. But then when I told him about the chakra project that I'm going to do with Lucinda and Dr. Gold, he stopped me and he said, oh, many of my students, and by the way, he have many Westerners who come to India, and he give degrees. They graduate from him and they go to teach in universities. Many Westerners who study online and in person. And he told me, oh, many of my students have done chakra projects in recent years, and it's all wrong. and he talked about his students.
I love that character, don't you?
Yeah. And I told him, I tried to convince him that I'm really interested to do something that is in reverence to the ancient knowledge. I want to know what are the musical modes that were used in ancient times, because I want to do justice to the ancient knowledge. I don't want to just go on a limb and invent something without any root. And somehow I convinced him that I'm honest,
because you are.
Because I was.
No, I know, but exactly.
You're earnest. You're earnest and you're honest. So you said, I promise. So what did he do? How did he? Well, if you were to say what was lacking or different, or what's the difference between, aside from working with this Indian master, what would you say the differences between your work and what he said were his students who were producing not correct work?
Yeah, well, he didn't feel that their music really invoked the quality of the chakras. He did not invoke the quality, because I think it was lacking real root from the ancient teaching. Many of them were not using Indian ragas. They were not using the tonal centers. Each chakra has a different tonal center, a musical note that it's rooted, and the first chakra has a different note than the second chakra and the third chakra and the fourth chakra, and it's a rising scale. It's a music scale that's rising up. And so there's many musical details that have been suggested by the ancients, by the yogi masters of the past, that suggested, use this, use that. And then I learned about which kind of instruments, that certain string instruments, plucked string instruments, should be used for that chakra, while bowed strings with the middle range should be used for that chakra. And that's how I found, I created a chart of which instruments I'm going to use and which tonal center and which raga, which musical Indian mode. And then I called Lucinda for a meeting, and Dr. Gold was on a Skype sitting in with us for that meeting. And I played to Lucinda an example of what I'm intending to use. For example, I would use a cello for the third chakra, like a classical Bach cello. And I played it, and I would use a big gong featuring the gongs, a whole battery of gongs for the root chakra. And I played them examples from the internet, not my music, but just things that I found on the net of Indian masters or other masters who played those instruments in a mood that I thought appropriate. And I just wanted to get Lucinda's feedback. And everything that I played, Lucinda closed her eyes and she was, yes, I feel it. I feel it. This is it. And that was really, I wanted to test it on Lucinda. So, because Lucinda.
And were your spouses okay with this whole experience?
Oh my God. So we're all very close. We're all very
Seems very intimate, this whole experience.
Well, I think what made the whole thing work is it's this artistic creativity kind of melding. And P.S., I'm really good friends with his wife, and he's really good friends with
I'm just joking.
No, but it's important, those things, because you need to feel safe that you're sitting in a studio and you're playing music and you're doing all this. But that was good.
Okay, so you would actually, you gave kind of a, like, here's my sense of the 7 chakras, and you actually worked with this Indian master. And raga, is that like you're saying that's the note, the actual note, or what is a raga definition-wise?
It's a musical scale. It's a musical mode, a musical scale. and each musical scale has a different nature, a different sound, a different style. And in the West, we are limited to only two scales, the major and the minor. And we know that the major, people consider it as a happy, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, da, 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 da. So that's the major scale. People consider that happy and bright. And then we have a minor scale, which all the sentimental songs go by, with like Green Sleeves, many minor key songs. People feel they are sentimental or melancholic, and that's the minor. And we have only two of them. In the East, we have numerous musical scales. In Europe, we lost it in the last 1,000 years. We used to have more in the Gregorian chants. In Europe, when in the modes that the monks would sing the Gregorian chants, they sang the Gregorian chants in 7 different modes, 7 different scales. So the Gregorian chants are 7 time rich, while today we have only 2 of those 7 survive. People don't use anymore the older scales. Now, in the East, in India, in Israel, in Syria, in Egypt, in the Middle East, and in the Far East, we have hundreds of musical scales. It's amazing. We have about 7 or 10 basic ones, and then further little nuances of changes of more and more and more and more scales.
So, are there certain instruments that evoke that scale, or is the limitation? So I can't even fathom what's the equivalent to the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So can you give me like an example of one of the 7 that we were not true? I don't understand how to translate.
And can I ask him a question too? Do you mean that there are extra notes like between C and C sharp and D flat? So sort of there's extra
notes that we don't have on the piano.
I see.
Yeah, we have also in the East. We have also notes in between the black key and the white key.
And that's that funny sound that you hear.
It sounds out of tune to us. We think it's out of tune, but for the Eastern people, it's not out of tune at all. So there's we call it quarter tones or micro tuning, or it's in between the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. So that's one thing that adds more possibilities to create more musical scales. You see, so there are different musical scales in India that musicians would use to create different mood. You see, there's a connection in the word mood and mode, because a musical mode is affecting the person's mood, and that's part of the medicine of India. The musical medicine was based on the fact that you can change the mood and the mindset of a person and the vibration that you expose by changing the musical scale. So people would use that. So there's musical scales that would make you more relaxed than others. The musical scales that would make you more contemplative. The musical scales that would make you more bright. The musical scales that make you more up in your head versus down in your feet. And all these things combined with the kind of musical instruments, the starting tone, if you start music here, or if you start the music here, it vibrates differently.
Right.
So that is the tonal, the tonal center. So each chakra has a different tonal center. So all the music that we have on this album is informed by that. So I chose to have those rules, those things that were given to me from ancient India, from the ancient master. I chose to have those rules, and I couldn't just compose music that sounds like Marlon Brando.
But within.
So I had the instructions and the hints from Lucinda that inspired me immediately.
Okay, so you have parameters. You had this gentleman from India who said, "This is what raga is. Here's the various notes to start with to inspire these moods and modes." And then you kind of layered on your Marlon Brando, dark chocolate.
The other thing that I did is in the same way as there's an ancient wisdom about the ragas, there's a lot of ancient wisdom about mantras. A mantra just means a vehicle that's taking you, somewhere, and probably everyone listening a prayer, there are Christian prayers that are mantras, and there are Sanskrit mantras, which is considered the oldest language. So I went to my amazing Himalayan Indian master, who's Swamiji, who's well over 100 years old, and said, what would be the best mantras to do? And then, again, this is why I think the whole thing was touched by grace. I had my iPhone with me, and I was sitting in the street asking, and I just said, am I in the right direction with these, with the things that I've written? And then he basically said, let me give you the mantra. So I pressed record on the iPhone and put it under, and then he whispered 3 times each of the mantras for each of the chakras. And I mean, in the same way as if you hear, I was just watching Bohemian Rhapsody, but if you hear Freddie Mercury, that will do something to you, whatever. I mean, it makes me feel extremely happy and positive. But the idea is, if you have a master who has said that mantra for years and years and years, and he actually has walked barefoot around the world 3 times, you're going to carry some of that. So the fact that we have his whisper, I think on the track.
So we included his voice.
So his voice is he just whispers the mantra, because I wanted to honor that. I mean, I could whisper the same mantras, but I wanted to hear an authentic Indian.
So it's like so hum yum hum, like those mantras.
Yes, it's similar. Yeah, it's Bijan seeds that go up.
Okay, got it. So what are they? Can you tell us what they are? What are they?
So don't put me on the spot, because I'm going to totally forget. Well, I know the root one. I'll tell you the ones that are coming to me off the top of my head. Shring is the root one. Soham is this one. Cling, I think, is the third one. And I've just blanked in a pure moment.
Okay, no, I just want to know. So it's different than because I've heard ones where it's like so hum, yum, hum, whatever. Osham,
no, but that's exactly what I went through. A lot of the ones, it's a bit like Yuval. I went through the ones that I had learnt that I knew really, really well. And I was quite surprised. Oh, actually, no, not those ones. These are the ancient traditional ones. So I too went, okay, well, let's do those ones then.
Wow. So that's a real homage to the past and the ancient wisdom that is embedded in the mantras, in the music, and incorporating these two things together. So I'm still curious about the creative process. So you would be like, okay, here's what Marlon Brando sounds like, and then you're like, I'm going to layer, and then part of the layers was to include this incredible master who has had like vibrational healing with almost his voice, and the intention of his 100 years plus and all his lineage is like, boom, that's in there as well. Okay, and then what did you do?
So I was writing the 10-minute pieces for each of the chakras. So I knew I had to take people on a journey, and this came from having worked with people for many, many years. I mean, I've been into South Central to do empowerment workshops. I've been in the jails. I've worked with veterans of PTSD. I mean, I've worked with a number of different people using meditation and healing people, and how to contact with their spirit guides. I mean, all sorts of things like that. And so I think what we were both trying to do was honor what is traditional, but also, we're now in a world where, I mean, Jung has happened, and therapy has happened, and the women's movement has happened, and et cetera, is really happening right now. I think we're in the middle of a revolution, thank God. But I also remembered many of the people who I'd helped over the years, and so I knew that there were specific things that people struggled with. Like, for example, in the heart chakra, I've worked with quite a few people who were widowed, young, and that was very hard for them to trust, I suppose, themselves again, trust spirit again. I think if you lose anyone in a violent, tragic manner very suddenly, I think it's hard to turn to spirituality and believe that it's robust enough to help you. And I'd also done a lot of work with, the inner child. But what I wanted to do with this is, rather than work just with the wounded inner child, but was to work with the idea of the magical child, the creative child, because we wanted to stay on a positive basic arc. But it was a very important discussion when I said, I think, because there were some meditations And again, they have their place. I'm not trying to knock anybody else's thing, but I wanted to do something where the shadow was owned. So the second chakra, for example, is, is a lot to do with addiction, and when we reach for something other than that which is spirit. And so my prayer when I wrote these was to attempt. I was listening to all those students over all the years and various things that they'd suffered, and I was trying to take them on a journey so that was acknowledged. For example, in the heart chakra, there's a room of the magical child takes them into a room of broken dreams, because I think it's hard to just there's a kind of, and forgive me if I'm saying American, but overly positive sort of, hey, just go for your dreams and it's all okay. And it's not, it's not. Some people need to recover from their PTSD before they can go for their dreams or their losses. So I was trying to just write little stories, I suppose, and acknowledge and acknowledge the shadow, which of course meant I had to go into my own. Actually, I haven't told this before, but I wrote them on 7. Then I'm going to hand it to you. I wrote them on 7 days, and that was funny because it was almost like the universe would test me. So, for example, I'm doing the root chakra, and I travelled. I decided to go away for a week to write these things, and of course, my baggage got lost. My routing, my suitcase with all my things. So I felt and every day something would happen that would sort of kick up the shadow, because I'd done a lot of research into what the shadow. So. That the shadow of the root, is disorganization. The shadow of the heart is grief. So that's why I'm saying you sort of have to own the grief. And so on each of the chakras, it was almost as if that day, I hadn't felt like smoking a cigarette for 25 years. And I'm doing the second one, which is overcoming addictions. And I'm suddenly like, I don't know, I could have a cigarette while I write this. And I'm like, what? But it was almost like I was being taught, you're not above all of this. You're just, we're all here on the earth together. And, you have to go through your shadow in order to write it. But it helped me because I realized how important it was to overcome those sort of urges. And, so it went on.
Yeah, so when I'm noticing what's interesting is because your basis is an actress, it's about scenes, it's about dialogue, it's about building rapport with the audience, and that's all that you. I love how each of you brought your unique strengths into the creation of this, and so that's what I'm hearing. So
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah,
indeed.
And then the great day came when we had to unveil what the other had been up to. We're like, oh God, is this going to match at all, or is this going to be like like a bad potluck? Where you're like,
everyone bought an entree, everyone brought salad. Darn it!
Exactly. You're like, oh God, no.
Yeah.
So then, what happened when you guys collaborated? When you each went, you each went your separate ways. You kind of. Oh, I just love how even your creative processes were so similar, and that you both went to like the ancient wisdom, and then you connected it to your knowledge and neuroscience and the Western stuff. So what happened when you connected?
Well, I played the music first to Lucinda, each one of them, and I think, they all went through quite well with Lucinda. She responded very well to all of them. I think one...
But by the way, as anybody with a pair of ears would. I mean, if you hear this music, you just go, God, that's amazing. There was one. Well, there were two. There was one which was the root chakra that we all had quite a lot of problems with, but we laughed because we thought... That's because essentially we don't live down in that root chakra very much. We tend to... Dr. Gold, who was... absolutely instrumental to this entire process and was in on every single recording session as the producer. But all of us, I think, we live up here a little bit. Maybe we come down here. So the root was like, oh God, for me particularly.
Yeah, the root was, it was all gongs, and it was beautiful and deep. And Lucinda felt there was something missing for her, and it was quite... hard to find what it is. It was a taiko drum that I added, but then it was what the taiko drum will play, and there was certain things that the taiko drum played that it was too minimalistic and too automatic for Lucinda, and some that were too active. There was a very, very, very nuanced dosage of, and finally I remember Lucinda recorded on her phone a certain rhythm that she wanted to hear from the taiko drum that she didn't hear, and she recorded something for me with her voice, and I took it to the taiko drum and recorded that, and that was magical. It just worked. Finally, it worked. But it was like a spice. The whole thing is gongs. There are 3 huge gongs
for the root chakra.
For the root chakra. And the taiko drum is way in the background, kind of giving kind of a heartbeat, a slow heartbeat behind those big, huge gongs. But the dosage, the amount of the frequency, how much of the taiko and how often and how sparse, and it was a very delicate balance to find, and we found it, and that was sealed the root chakra, and then the second chakra was a great success right away with the sitar music.
Oh, it was so beautiful, and also just the magic, because I don't work, in the world of music. I love music. I've been in an opera, wandering around as a wolf and doing, just so I could be on a stage, for kind of 3 hours. It was amazing. It was a Salman Rushdie script. I mean, it was lovely, kind of back in the day. But I totally lost my track now. I'm back in the wolf days. Go on, you go on.
Well, what I notice is that you're channeling, in some ways, like you're channeling. I love your creative process because it's part of like, let's do the research. So I'm not just like, because some of the music that, no offense to anyone else, it's like, where are you pulling? It seems like you're pulling this out of your ass. Like, it's not like you're pulling it out of spirit. It's like this kind of channeling, but it's not like.
Honesty.
Well, maybe if you were doing first chakra, maybe that's okay. But pull it out of your ass if that's it. But it's like this. It's kind of like this channeling, but from like a wise kind of embodied place. That's what I'm hearing is from both of you, and you're both taking your strengths and.
Well, I think what we both really appreciated, and I again include Dr. Gold in this, is that you have to understand I am not a composer. So when I'm going, something with that first chakra, it's not right. When I prayed and I meditated, and then I actually heard that rhythm and did it, and I thought, I'm actually going to send this amazing composer my little rhythm. I thought, I'm not sure about this. Okay. And I've never told you that. I was like, oh my God, this is just really cheeky and wrong. But I did it. And I will say, thank God, simultaneously, I can remember we were on one chakra. And I remember I felt I just got the 3-art thing, perfectly. I knew what I'm doing with writing. I've written all my life. I had a best-selling book. I'm marvelous, And so I was on this particular way that this chakra was going to unfold. And Yuval just kind of looked at me and said, it's not finished. And I said, no, it's finished. And he was like, it's not finished. And I went, oh, Christ, is it not finished? But we were able to take each other's feedback. And actually, he was dead right. Because there was a whole, I remember it was the throne. It was sitting on the throne. But I remember, he's right. That actually, a bit like in Shakespeare, when they do that lovely sort of fifth act kind of recapitulation. And I thought, no, that has to be. So I think we proved to each other that we could listen.
Yeah.
It would be magic if we were making a spiritual meditation.
It's very true. So in a way, Lucinda was the director, like the film director. When I work with a film director and I play them the music for the scene, and they give me feedback, and I need to revise to make them feel happy with how the music works in the scene. So in a way, Lucinda was the director when I played her the music, and I got her feedback, and that was the first stage of the game. So we finalized the music based on the feedback that came from Lucinda. And then Lucinda came to the studio with a text, and she started reading it to the music that we finalized. She started reading the music, the text, and then I was the director. He was listening. I was the listening ear, and I was just imagining myself meditating or focusing on that. And then I would be completely engaged, and I was just breathless for 4 minutes, and then suddenly in after 5 minutes she would lose me. Like I lost it. I lost it. I don't know what I'm thinking. So I opened my eyes and I look at the timing, and it was 5 minutes and 17 seconds. And so then when we stopped the take, I went back and I said, Lucinda, I don't know, but at 5 minutes 17, you lost me. There was too many images. There were so many images. I just didn't have time to digest it. We have to slow down or cut something. So I was kind of the director or the audience test group for Lucinda on the text. So we made edits and revisions and perfected the text. And then we recorded that.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, particularly the seventh chakra, the music is so angelic. I mean, it's sublimely beautiful. And I was really nervous, actually, about... I wasn't... Nervous isn't the right word.
Well, it's tricky.
I didn't know how can you even put words to... Because the seventh chakra, in a sense, is... to me, sort of, it's celestial, like each of, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but, you know, it's earth, water, fire, air, space, ether. And the last one is sort of beyond. It is,
words.
You know, it's beyond words. And when we started, we were like, God, how do we write music notes and words to that which is beyond words?
Yeah, that's intimidating.
Yeah. And when I researched it in India, you know, they told me, you know, the music of the seventh chakra is silence. It's silence. It's a pause. It's beyond sound. It's beyond music. And so I said it'll be great. We're just going to have 10 minutes of silence.
I love it. All right, so I'm
going to get people to pay $2.99 for 10
for silence. You're like, why did I pay for this? All right, guys, tell us what the website is so folks who are interested in getting this music, how do they go about finding it and gifting it for a gift for someone for Christmas?
Yeah, so you can Google Meta with 2 T's, Meta Mindfulness Music. And right there, metamindfulnessmusic.com, you can find the album right on the homepage. You can look for it on iTunes or CD Baby or Amazon, anywhere.
So would I download all 7, or I just like pick the one that I want, or I can do everything I want? Okay.
Get the whole album, or you can get just the tracks of the chakra that you want. And you can get it just by Googling Voyage through the chakras. If you just Google that, you're going to find it everywhere. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much.
To talk to you. Thank you very much, CJ.
Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show, and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.